Metro on WDET. I'm Robin Vincent. Detroit and Windsor built one economy. On a typical day, thousands of trucks cross the river with parts that may cross back again before a single car rolls off the line. But that rhythm is off. New tariffs and shifting border rules have fueled uncertainty, and you can see it in fewer trucks and feel it in prices. The port handled about 1.4 million inbound trucks last year, down from over 1.5 million the year before. And the flow has been wobbling through 2025. Canadian travel to the U.S. has also slumped this summer, draining foot traffic from border businesses. A new crossing, the Gordie Howe International Bridge, could add capacity later this year, but the rules at the booth still set the tempo. So today, we're going to unpack the mechanics and the human impact with Marta Leardi-Anderso. She's executive director of the Cross-Border Institute at the University of Windsor. Marta, welcome to the Metro.
Good morning.
So Detroit and Windsor often act like one hometown. People commute for work, fans cross for games, and car parts shuttle back and forth before a vehicle is finished. How would you explain this one economy in everyday terms?
Technically, Robin, we refer to it as an integrated economy, meaning, and you've said it with regard to specifically the automotive industry, where a part can cross as up to, as many as 7 times before it gets dropped into a finished and completed vehicle.
Wow.
Those of us who aren't economists would likely just say it's a region, it's a unique region. It's like a lot of border towns across the Canada-U.S. border where, and you've said it, where we cross daily, hourly, just to enjoy each other's amenities, to visit family and friends, to conduct business. It's very much a dependent relationship, I'd say, and a very unique relationship. I think the further you get away from border communities, the less folks understand exactly how they function. And then, sometimes the folks that don't live close to border communities are making decisions that impact us. And sometimes those decisions look disjointed from how we actually live our lives.
Marta, the example you gave of a car part potentially crossing 7 times before that car part is installed, I think really gives us a clearer picture of this important relationship. Could you give us another example that makes this shared economy real, that helps us to really visualize it?
Robin, it's not, of course, in this region, we tend to focus on the automotive industry, and the automotive industry definitely has tentacles into other areas of our economy and other economic sectors, including agriculture. We take a look at the advanced and automated manufacturing that goes on under the automotive umbrella, and then those things get adapted to function in agriculture. We see that the what we grow under glass or under climate-controlled environment for food has really become increasingly more technical. It's adapted a lot of the theory of how you can automate some of those aspects of producing food, and translating that on how to increase productivity in our food. And a lot of the products that are grown in the Windsor and Essex County region make their way across the river into Michigan, Ohio, Indiana, into other states. So I would say our agriculture sector is also quite connected in that way. If we look out west in Canada, we have other aspects of farming and cattle that really are quite related between the states out in the Midwest and our western provinces. So it's again, it's not just one sector. It's for us in this region, agriculture, and in some ways in other areas related to our very critical medical sector as well.
Okay, so now we're getting a better sense of the ways that we are so interconnected, all of these different industries that depend on each other from one side of the border and the other. Now, let's look at what's happening right now at the border. You told us your team is counting fewer trucks since spring, that it's down by the thousands. Marta, in plain terms, what does the border look like this month? Are we seeing fewer runs, longer waits, or both? And is that measured per day, per week, per month?
So for us here at the Cross Border Institute, Robin, and with my colleague, Dr. Hannah Mao, who runs our traffic lab, we have our own data, and we're following the trucking, the commercial trucks that cross from Canada into the U.S. through the Ambassador Bridge. And we only track the Ambassador Bridge because our Gordie Howe Bridge isn't up and functioning yet and will be quite shortly. And we're seeing a significant drop in the number of trucks headed into the U.S. across the Ambassador Bridge. Month over month, it looks like we're down approximately 11,000 trucks making that trip. So it is significant, especially when you assume, and we haven't done the analysis yet to be absolutely certain, but based on what we've done previously, it probably is associated with manufacturing, and that's a huge loss for our region, because we do have such an integrated manufacturing economy. And when fewer products are crossing, that means fewer products are being made. And this might seem elementary, but it does translate into people losing their jobs. And we certainly have seen that on the Canadian side with some layoffs, and we have seen prices increase. So, again, I don't think the story is over. I think this is part of this ongoing dialogue that's related to trade and tariffs, but it's certainly the picture that we're seeing today.
I mean, you're talking about all of these unintended ripple effects, and this has me thinking as well about businesses who took the first hit but can't keep doing that. What are you hearing now when it comes to higher price tags, smaller orders, shorter hours, and what pushed owners to the point where they started having to make these decisions?
I think you're right, Robin. I think initially the bigger companies were taking the hit on the tariffs because the dialogue is continuing, and probably with the hope that come August 1st, which has come and gone, that something would be settled and we'd have more predictability in our business environment. That didn't happen. I think we are hearing that discussions are continuing between Washington and Ottawa related to the ongoing tariff discussions. However, it seems that those discussions have slowed down. The consequences are that we still, as businesses, are operating in an uncertain environment, and of course business doesn't like that. So hearing that larger businesses are now saying that they can no longer sustain swallowing the tariff cost, and certainly for small and medium-sized businesses, their world has become very complicated. Having to do the paperwork for a new set of tariffs is just it's time-consuming. These things are not automated. These things require time and attention. Also, as a small and medium-sized businesses, the profitability margins are smaller anyway.
Right.
And so I think the question becomes, how much longer can these businesses sustain an uncertain environment? And the question, will these tariffs come off? It doesn't look like they will. And if it doesn't, what will the rate be? And then could they sustain a lower rate? I think these, again, Robin, are questions that need to be answered sooner rather than later.
You mentioned an uncertainty tax when we spoke previously, when talk of new rules makes companies freeze decisions. And this seems to be the overarching consequence, this sense of impending doom and uncertainty. Can you talk a little bit more about how this is affecting companies and some of the decisions that they're now being faced with?
Not being able to plan new investments or taking investments in a different direction has really handicapped the growth possibility, I think, for the region. I think theoretically folks were thinking that this would, Canada, the U.S. would probably settle this tariff issue quickly and that folks would settle in and continue their planning, whether that is for businesses to go onto the U.S. side or stay in Canada. But what we're hearing as this discussion has evolved is that trying to separate an industry like the automotive industry, if we can go back to that has actually grown in the way that it has because of the structure of the trade agreements over the years, including the most recent agreement that the previous Prime Minister in Canada and the current President signed way back in 2016. Which is up for renewal, the USMCA or CUSMA, up for renewal in 2026. It gave impetus to the way industry has structured themselves and how investment has rolled out. Upending some of this has created, again, not knowing what direction to go into. So businesses have stood still, and they continue, I think, mostly to hold their breath and hope for the best. And what we're losing also is the opportunity cost. If we're not attracting new business and growing the businesses that we have in innovative ways, we are losing against our competitors. And this is a global economy. It's not Canada versus U.S. or U.S. versus Canada. This is everybody versus everybody. And so, and this is why you'll see the Premier of Ontario, for example, say, could we not look at a more closer partnership where Canada and the U.S. and perhaps even Mexico are a force to be reckoned with globally instead of fighting each other against some tariffs that, is probably detrimental to both jurisdictions. So I think this is a combination of a few really key issues, Robin, that businesses are really struggling with and trying to hedge their bets against, and probably thinking standing still and not making any real big decisions right now is probably the safer bet. And again, hoping that Canada and the U.S. will quickly come to some sort of solution.
Well, Marta,
resolution.
Forgive me for jumping in. What I'm hearing from you is that amid this global economy, what's happening now with President Trump's tariffs and trade war is that we're weakening the U.S. and Canada's place in this global economy.
I think that's definitely something that we have to keep in mind, Robin. I think as we are working through these issues, the rest of the world is not waiting for us. And I don't think anybody would think that. I think other jurisdictions are running to fill gaps. I think where we may be, short-sighted in that way. And I would hope, both President Trump's team and Prime Minister Carney's team have brilliant people on them. These people have worked through similar issues many times before. Nobody is new to this. Again, very seasoned people. So I'm assuming this kind of thing doesn't escape them. But I think for us who are sitting on the sidelines waiting to hear, these are certainly the things that we think about here at the Institute and I discuss with our network of colleagues across North America. So I would hope that, the discussions continue and that that folks remember that as a region, we are the first to feel any kinds of downturn in the economy when it has to do with tariffs and manufacturing.
Meaning Windsor and Detroit, the intimate relationship and one economy that we share.
Exactly.
Marta Leardi-Anderso is the executive director of the Cross-Border Institute at the University of Windsor. Marta, thank you so much for joining us today on the Metro.
Thank you, Robin.
This is the Metro on WDET, where we 2 years ago launched our annual listener survey, and your responses informed big programming changes. We added several new programs, including the Metro. And now we're asking for your response again to inform future programming. Let us know how we're doing. Go to WDET.org/survey. Coming up next, Michigan lacks an effective next of kin law for medical decisions. So who makes important medical choices when a patient can't do it themselves? New bipartisan legislation seeks to fill the decision gap. One of the lawmakers behind the bill joins me in the studio next. We'll be right back here on the Metro. Stay with us.